Welcome back to On Texas Football. Time for another edition of the Recruiting Breakdown, joined by Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel. I'm Jeff Howe. And before we do anything else, Gerry, we got a little bit of news to get to at the top, a little bit of official visit change for one of the state's top prospects.
Yeah, KJ Edwards, the four-star plus running back from Carthage, has On Texas Football was told this morning, Tuesday morning, that he has changed his official visit date from June 6th to June 20th. And that's significant. That means Texas gets the last official visit for KJ Edwards. We believe Texas leads for KJ Edwards. We know he had a great visit to Colorado, official visit. He's got a couple others coming up, obviously, in June before Texas. But the news there is he has changed his original date from June 6th to 8th to June 20th through 22nd. KJ Edwards, the kind of do-it-all back from Carthage. I was through there a few weeks ago. Coach Surratt, friend of the show, known him for many years, watched KJ Edwards work out. KJ Edwards, tremendous feet, really good balance, catches the ball out of the backfield, is a willing blocker. And one thing about Scott Surratt players, running backs, is they're complete backs. He asked them to pass pro. He asked them to be part of the passing game. He actually asked those guys to split out wide and learn a little bit of the route tree as well. So KJ Edwards, one of the top backs on the board, the top in-state running back on the board, has changed his official visit date to June 20th from June 6th.
You mentioned that, Gerry. Think about how ready Keontae Ingram was when he got to Texas, just from a football IQ standpoint, ready to come in and roll. Didn't take him long at all to pick it up, and he contributed right out of the gate for the Longhorns. All right, we'll get to more recruiting news here in just a bit. But, Gerry, before we go any further, let everybody know why if they've got anything on four wheels, they need to get in touch with Texas alum Mark Saunders.
Texas alum, Texas agent Mark Saunders. When it comes to protecting all your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? That's what you get with Mark Saunders. He serves the Austin and Round Rock area and the entire state of Texas. That means you need to give him a call if you're listening to this show. Everything from your home, car, boat, to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today, 512-218-8571. One guarantee I'll make. You won't be in good hands. You'll be in great hands with the over 35 years of experience that Texas alum Mark Saunders brings to the table. Again, give his Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office a call today, 512-218-8571.
CJ, wide receiver has been one of those positions where anytime we've done a live stream of late, we've gotten a lot of questions about what does that board look like? Who is Texas pursuing? And we talked about the tough decisions the staff is going to make. And as they've been on the road, we've seen things adjust. What about Cohen Brown? CJ, that's a name that's fairly new on the radar, the wide receiver out of Waxahachie. What's going on with Texas and Cohen Brown?
Yeah, speaking of good hands, Cohen Brown falls into that conversation. A one-time USC commit kind of backed off of that commitment earlier in May, and things have kind of opened back up for him. Texas has stopped by Waxahachie twice. Of course, we've talked about 2027 quarterback Jerry Meyer III. Now, Cohen Brown, one of the big point of interest there for the Texas staff at Waxahachie. It sounds like there will be a Texas official visit from Brown, whether it be June 6th, whether it be June 20th. We'll have to wait and see. But right now, Notre Dame is kind of the team leading the charge since he backed off of that commitment to USC earlier in May. So Texas, Chris Jackson stopping by twice. I was told Texas staffers stopped by again earlier on Monday of this weekend as well. It sounds like the Longhorns are going to become more involved here. And it sounds like it might end up being a Texas versus USC Notre Dame battle. Excuse me. Stop me if you've heard that before already in a DFW area wide receiver.
Hey, by the way, he's one where if you think the spring, your junior year on the track doesn't matter, it definitely matters. He went from 10.85 as a sophomore to 10.69 as a junior on the track. That's an attention grabber. I mean, when you start getting that sub 10.7, and he's CJ's 180, 185 pound kid.
He's thicker now.
Once you go see a kid in person that's running in the 10.6, high 10.6 range at 185 pounds, that changes one's recruitment. And I don't think it's a surprise, guys, that if you look at who's offered him late in this spring, we're talking about Notre Dame, Texas, Colorado. I mean, there's some teams have come in and offered him, and that spring on the track, he put numbers on the board. CJ's been over there multiple times covering the 27 quarterback too. He put numbers on the board, but then he matched them with faster times on the track, and I think that really elevated his status with college coaches.
Yeah, just adding one more thing to that. Seeing him last April of 2024, he had 2 offers, Tulsa and North Texas, now north of 40. So
Yeah.
to your point, Gerry, there's been some interest, all because of the production on the field matching that track times as well.
Yeah, Sark and Chris Jackson are not offering slugs. You gotta move if you're gonna play wide receiver for Steve Sarkisian. Gerry, I don't know if Grayson McKeo can run in the sub 10-6 range, but why offensive line is another position, just like we talked about with wide receiver. And I think it shows what this staff is all about. They're never done evaluating.
No.
Just when you think that offensive line board, when you've got it figured out, Kyle Flood goes and offers Grayson McKeo. And Gerry, this is an interesting offer because this is a massive kid, literally and figuratively, out of the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it was 6'7" and about 240, 245 a year ago. And now he's a little over 6'7" and 280 pounds right now, 280, 285, whatever he actually comes in at. Junior tape was really good. I mean, and he's a guy that doesn't have a ton of offers. We talk about the guys with offers, right? In Florida and Texas and Georgia, parts of California, those kids have 35, 40 offers that are at this talent level. He's sitting at 16, 17. But you have to look beyond that. His official visits are Notre Dame and Penn State. You think they've had success with Upper East Coast offensive linemen over the years, as well as Boston College, who's offered him, in Wisconsin? Yeah, he's a high-end offensive line prospect. He has got official visits to Notre Dame and Penn State. Kyle Flood was by the school yesterday before heading to the Hun School with Lyle and Clark to see Luke Waffle, the very talented edge prospect who will probably end up at Texas or Penn State and will visit later in June. But McKeo is a guy who's got really good length. He's got really good feet. Obviously a basketball player / football player when he was younger. Has really matured late. There's some similarities with him, and I'm not saying Texas is going to get him or even bring him in for an OV. That remains to be seen, but June 20th is on the table for an OV potentially if he's not already committed to Notre Dame or Penn State by that time. But there's some Trevor Goosby comparisons here from a frame standpoint. Goosby was a late developer physically, and now that he's got the college, he's added 60 pounds, 55, 60 pounds to that frame from when he was at an Under Armour camp in the spring of his junior year. And I think you see something very similar with Grayson McKeo. And to your point, Aaron Thomas was another spring offer from Kyle Flood. And I think it's twofold. Look, we have to be real at the same time. Kenye Pepe, a guy that Texas really liked, decided to go to USC out of IMG, goes to IMG, but he's originally from SoCal, decided to commit to USC, right? And a lot of people like on ontexasfootball.com are saying, well, why would Texas offer this guy? Well, because they're in a good place with Turntine and Ojo and some of these other guys. And I simply say, because the recruitments are in the balance. I mean, that's the reality. You can't stop evaluating really good players, even if you think you're in a good position with a couple of guys, because you never know what's going to happen at the end of the day. You better keep bringing in talented guys and make sure that your 5-man offensive line class is the best it can be. And the only way you can do that is if you keep evaluating players and finding the best offensive lineman in the country, regardless of ranking. And I saw one last week, Joel Irvin, out of Fort Myers, who I think Texas is going to show some interest in here, the Miami commitment. But you can't stop recruiting these guys, because I'm here to tell you, I saw Joel Irvin last week, and I'm not sure he's not as good as any of them. Any of the guys Texas is recruiting as a prospect on the offensive line. I think he's that talented. But you got to keep recruiting these guys. One, that's the great evaluation by a program, is to continue to evaluate and recruit these guys through the whistle. But two, the reality is a couple of guys that Texas really liked committed elsewhere that were scheduled for official visits. And you can't go for a 5-man recruiting class of offensive linemen with 8 official visitors. That puts you in a little bit of a bind, even though you have 2 guys committed. You have to have the numbers normally double your official visits to match the number you want to sign. And I think you'll see 10 official visitors for 5 spots. And the other reality with offensive line recruiting is, even though Texas may be in a good position for 2 or 3 guys, when the dominoes start falling, that doesn't mean those same guys are going to look at the Texas situation the same. And what if Texas gets a couple of offensive tackles in the boat and either John Turntine or Ojo's hanging out there later? They may say, that situation's not the same. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but what I am saying is we're talking about recruiting here. And if you're a staff that's evaluating well and you're continuing to plan for your class, you have to recruit like nothing's taken for granted. You have to continue to find the best players.
Gerry, that's the other side of the coin. I mentioned earlier the staff's got tough decisions to make. Recruits have some tough decisions to make too. And I think it's even doubly important on the offensive line because what Sark and Kyle Flood have shown, they're not going to cut corners when it comes to the offensive line. They don't go to the portal for offensive linemen. They want grassroots recruiting. They want player development. They want to be a developmental offensive line program. They've been that. That's how they got to this point where they're a top 5 program and competing for a national championship. They don't want that to slow down. So good on Kyle Flood for continuing to evaluate guys along the offensive line. And we'll stick on the offensive line because the theme of this week's edition of the Recruiting Breakdown is 5-star official visitors. Now, before we get going, and we'll talk about the 2 5-stars, and they're both in-state guys, which I know people
and
can't.
CJ saw them last week.
Yeah, TJ saw them last week. Can't get enough information on both of them. But before we get to the offensive line, I'll just reiterate, Gerry, it's nice when you can go into the summer and the most important position on the field is taken care of. They've got Diabell in the boat. He's locked in, and you've got your quarterback locked up for 2026. It's a good feeling.
Yeah, it's a great feeling, and he's a guy that, look, you want to know how talented he is? Before Jared Curtis committed to Georgia, Georgia was after Diabell. Ohio State's remained after Diabell. That's when you know you have a really strong quarterback commitment because quarterbacks commit early, and they know that was a long shot to flip a Diabell, but those guys are still trying. I saw Diabell last week at American Heritage. Looks really good coming off his injury, and he got lucky with the injury. And we didn't kind of go over that on the YouTube interview, but he acknowledged that, and he acknowledged how excited he was to get back on the field. Feet looked really good Wednesday. Really talented thrower of the football. Leadership skills is his voice as a leader is really grown in the last year. But he's excited about the Texas commitment. Will be on campus June 20th. So, Texas has their quarterback commitment in the fold. They have for quite a while. And A.J. Milwee, by the way, for those wondering, will be by the school this week as you get those 2 visits during the spring.
Hey, if I can add something on Diabell there, oddly enough, heard a lot about him in Louisiana, specifically at Edna Carr, who plays him week 4.
Oh, yeah,
there'll be Hayward Howard Jr. going off against Diabell there. So 2 Texas commits battling one another, but a lot of excitement to see the Texas commit in person. A lot of hype. A lot of these guys play 7-on-7 in those travel leagues against one another, a lot at the overtime 7-on-7 as well. So there's a lot of expectation, and I heard from Hayward Howard. I'm excited to go see him. I want to, as a cornerback would, he wants to get an interception there, kind of, talk some smack as well. But friendly competition coming up this September 12th is when that game will take place as well.
CJ, let's get to the 2 in-state offensive linemen. 5-star visitors coming to Texas. John Turntine III. He's got Michigan, Texas, A&M, Texas. Gerry just reported recently that he's replaced. Took Tennessee off his list, added Stanford, Felix Ojo out of Mansfield, Lake Ridge. CJ, a little more open, a lot more schools in the mix. Turntine's got that narrow focus. You went and saw both those guys recently. What do you feel like is the latest on where Texas stands on those 2?
Yeah, I'll start with John Turntine, and you could tell by that changing of his official visit schedule with Stanford, Texas A&M, Michigan, and Texas. What's the one common denominator there? Well, it's education. A lot of smart, institutions on his list for official visits. Of course, he originally wanted to be a doctor and has since kind of said, hey, I want to still go into the medical field of some sort, maybe a psychology something. I don't know what he's officially going to do just yet, but hey, I don't know if a doctor is going to be lining up with some of this football schedule for him, of course, but we'll see. Smart kid, point being. Gerry can back that up as well. But look, I have a hard time believing this won't be a Texas versus Texas A&M battle. He's been to both schools 6 or 7 times apiece. He's very familiar with the staffs, the campuses, the cities both are in, of course. Right now, I feel like that's where things are trending. And then on the opposite side for Felix Ojo, look, I think things are pretty open, yet I have a hard time believing the Longhorns aren't in that pole position for him right now. Does that mean Texas will lead and land both? We'll have to wait and see after these official visits. Ojo specifically has been on 3 or 4 already, Florida being the most recent. He's been to Ole Miss, seen Colorado, Texas Tech. I don't believe Colorado's a factor anymore. But that doesn't stop things for him, right? Oklahoma's in the mix, Ohio State's in the mix, and Michigan again. And originally my thought for Ojo was going to be a Texas-Ohio State battle. I don't think Oklahoma's going to be a big factor after landing their prize last year in Michael Fasusi. But I kind of come across this nugget on the road as well. And don't sleep on Michigan for either one of these, right? Especially after the Bryce Underwood recruitment a year ago. Michigan's now in a position to play some heavy ball in this NIL world. Will they do that for a big-time blue-chip offensive lineman to protect their prize, Bryce Underwood? We'll have to wait and see. But right now, I have a great feeling about Texas in both recruitments. And to Gerry's point, we'll have to wait and see how these all play out after the official visits with the rest of the targets on the board.
Gerry, I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but when you look at offensive line official visitors this summer between Turntine, Ojo, Malachi Lee, my favorite O-lineman in the class, Samuel Roseboro out of Florida, Sam Utu out of California. Gerry, that's 5 guys that are OTF, either 4-star plus pluses or 5 stars. We look back at that 2022 recruiting class for Kyle Flood with Kelvin Banks and DJ Campbell as a kind of cornerstone class. This could very easily be another one that if Texas ends up winning a national championship a few years down the road, you can look back at the 2026 O-line class and say that was the foundation of it right there.
I totally agree. And look, Nicholas Robertson, talented commit, Max Wright, ton of upside there as well. Both, I think, believe 4-star recruits. I believe both are a little underrated nationally. And I'm not saying that because I cover Texas. It doesn't matter to me. But yeah, Sam Roseboro, tremendous kid, a high level of intelligence. I think that may be as impressive as anything with the Turntine, Sam Roseboro, Ojo. Those are very intelligent kids, right? They're fits. You can see the fit with Texas there. Malachi Lee, I'm just here to tell you, look, people haven't seen Malachi Lee as much because obviously he's in Honolulu. But Kyle Flood and Johnny Nansen went out there a week and a half ago. Texas loves Malachi Lee. The question is, can they actually get him? And then you have Utu out of Orange Lutheran, who Texas has liked for a while. There's a connection around that recruitment in Texas. We'll see which way that goes. Obviously, all those guys can't go to Texas. Texas wants 2 more tackles for sure in this class, then probably best available. Then you have Zayden Crimpin, 4-star, who, I think he wants to play offensive tackle. I think that's always kind of the question I've had with Texas. Is CJ can talk about that as well. That's the question I've always had around with Texas and Crimpin does he really believe he could be an offensive tackle at Texas? That's the question, because I think Texas is recruiting him as a lineman, right? A talented lineman. Hey, we'll give you a chance at tackle. There's other schools that are saying you're definitely going to play tackle for us. Hey, again, Michigan's in that one as well, CJ. Yeah. Michigan's trying to recruit the state of Texas offensive linemen really hard, and it's because it's a great class in the state.
Yeah, let's not forget Sharon Moore, the head coach of Michigan. He's an OU guy, so Sharon Moore knows about offensive line talent in the state of Texas. Gerry, we got a few more guys to get to on our list of 5-star official visitors for June, but before we do that, one more time, let everybody know about Texas alum Mark Saunders.
Yeah, he's the one guy that you need to call. He can protect all your stuff. And if you're in the Austin and Round Rock area, the entire state of Texas, Mark Saunders is the only insurance agent you'll need. Everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and that ATV. If you got it, call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today, 512-218-8571. Do what so many other On Texas Football community members have done over the last couple of years. That's call Texas alum Mark Saunders for all your insurance needs. Austin, Round Rock area, or the entire state of Texas, 512-218-8571.
Guys, there are 4 June official visitors that are either OTF 5 stars or are ranked as recruiting industry 5 stars, all out-of-state prospects. Got Mark Bowman, the elite tight end out of Mater Dei, out in California. Lamar Brown out of University Lab in Baton Rouge. Gerry, we talked about it on the live stream this week. Maybe a little bit of a Jerry Tillery comp for Lamar Brown. Xavier Griffin, the linebacker out of Gainesville High in Georgia, who just decommitted from USC, and then another Georgia kid, Bryce Perry Wright out of Buford. Whichever one of you guys wants to take it, of those 4, which one intrigues you the most?
Ooh, Gerry, I got my answer. I'll start.
You start with CJ. I think I know where you're going, but go ahead and get going.
I'm going with Lamar Brown because look, that is I don't know, for folks who haven't seen his huddle, you need to go take a look at it, because that is as athletic as a offensive line prospect as you'll see. And then you see him flip it over to the defensive line. You say, okay, there might be an even higher ceiling here. And, that's where things kind of flipped for Texas, literally to the defensive side with Alan Clark, a native of Baton Rouge, stopping by University Lab to go see Lamar Brown earlier in the month of May. And quickly after, there was a kind of a tease on Twitter from Brown saying, hey, maybe I got to go see Austin. Maybe I finally need to get up there. go see what it's all about, because there's been back and forth with Texas. Previously, it was Kyle Flood, he told me. Now it's Alan Clarkins, the defensive line. And here you go, an official visit set to the Longhorns for the month of June. I think that's one that really, really intrigues me right now. Lamar Brown's a heck of a prospect, Gerry. I know that he's one of those guys that you kind of peg to LSU, but I think if Texas can get him on campus, that's going to be one that might be a really tight race moving down the line.
Yeah, and Jeff, I love the Jerry Tillery reference because he was at Shreveport Evangel Christian. He was listed as an offensive tackle on his prospect profiles to this day in the recruiting industry, yet he's playing defensive line in the NFL, and he decided he wanted to be a defensive lineman and went with the schools that were recruiting him as such. And that's what's happening with Lamar Brown. And I would say this too, could this be a Jonah Williams recruitment for Texas, where Texas started off recruiting Jonah as a linebacker, then switched it to safety, a positional switch, changed that recruitment, because if Texas had recruited Jonah as a linebacker, he would not have signed with Texas.
Right.
And now with Lamar Brown, he wants to be recruited as a defensive lineman. And now Texas can apply pressure to LSU and A&M in this recruitment, because they're like, we hired Lyle and Clark. He's from Baton Rouge. Him and Kenny Baker, we see you as a D lineman. Lyle and Clark saw you as a D lineman when he was at Ohio State. And now you can bring this recruitment, add a little pressure to the other schools and force their hand a little bit in their messaging. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Now, pulling a guy from University Lab is not the easiest chore in recruiting, but it has happened before. Guys have left that school and have not gone to LSU before, but you got to love that he's making an official visit. Then obviously the one for me is Mark Bowman, because look, he's the top ranked tight end in the country. The day he reclassed, I was told it would come down to Texas and Georgia. And now he was at Ole Miss last weekend. Oregon and USC are also getting OVs. And with what USC's got going, you shouldn't really dismiss him, but the family's not from SoCal. They moved to SoCal. Father was actually born in Louisville, Texas. When they came down to looking for high schools when they were moving from Colorado, it came down to Mater Dei, Austin, Westlake, and South Lake Carroll. And they went with Mater Dei in the Orange County. Who can blame them for that? But it's going to be an interesting recruitment, because look, the Brock Bowers comparisons are there. But you know what's different? What's the quarterback room at Georgia? The offensive coordinators changed at Georgia. I'm just interested to see where this goes. And the one thing that hasn't changed about Texas is your play callers or head coach, and your quarterback room is really, really solid. And so it's going to be interesting, because a lot of people thought when this recruitment started, he'd go to Georgia. And I think now in our industry, there's picks for both places, right? Texas and Georgia. But the question becomes, at the end of the day, does Texas end up being a better fit for him as a player? Whether that's Sark as a play caller and head coach, whether that's the quarterback room, whether that's the tight ends in general at Texas. Obviously, Oscar Delp, those guys had a good year too. Brock Bowers was a great player, but what's the future look like at Texas from an offensive standpoint, maybe versus Georgia? Could that be the difference in Texas? I'm talking out loud here. We're going to find out. But to me, that's what makes it a really interesting recruitment, because there were people on the West Coast that when this process started, they swore that kid would go to Georgia. And some of those people are starting to back off that a little bit.
Jerry, real quick before we get out of here, you had a note on Monday about Tyler Atkinson, the 5-star linebacker out of Georgia. And I think it's key to note, he gets a lot of attention, and rightfully so, but there are 3 high-end linebackers in the Peach State that Texas is recruiting. Xavier Griffin's one of those guys who's got an OV locked in. Braden Rouse is the other. You had a note early on Monday, and I'll lead you in with this, as winning out for one of the Peach State linebackers is going to be key. Where do you think things stand right now, Jerry, with Texas and those 3 guys?
CJ, we both saw Xavier Griffin and when he was in Austin, and he is an impressive looking guy physically, by the way. But him and Lyle and Clark obviously have a pretty strong relationship. Now, Xavier Griffin is a linebacker, but you can cross. Johnny Nanson's part of that recruitment. Lyle and Clark also part of that recruitment. He's a versatile guy. You can do a lot of things with him, like you do a Trey Moore, like you do an Anthony Hill. So he is a linebacker. He can also rush off the edge, but he's not really an edge prospect for me. But Lyle and Clark is part of that recruitment. Kenny Baker, obviously part of that recruitment as well, being an area recruiter and his father being a longtime head coach in that area. But Xavier Griffin, very interesting to me. I think Texas has a legitimate shot in this recruitment. Legitimate shot. Ohio State, Alabama, Florida State are and I actually think Georgia is going to be in that mix too. I really do. Georgia's not. It's not like Georgia's not going to be in the mix for Xavier Griffin on some level. They're going to be in the mix. The question is with Georgia or anybody. Tyler Atkinson, I consider a Georgia lean. Source close to him yesterday said, "Look, he's going to come back to Austin before he makes a decision." We'll see on that. Until a date pops out, I'm still in, okay, let's wait and see, because I know Ohio State and Clemson are right there battling Georgia. But Xavier Griffin, CJ, I think Texas has a legitimate shot there. Unless he decides to, at the end of the day, hey, you know what, I'm just going to stay in state and play for Georgia. I think Texas has as good a shot as anybody.
Yeah, look, if he was ready to make a verbal to USC and fly across the country, I think a shorter trip to Texas could be in the works for him as well. And to your point, I don't want to downplay the relationship with Alan Clark, because we saw it outside of Moncrief during his trip to Texas. The two got along very well, and I think that the two having that relationship, just like with a Lamar Brown, puts Texas into a position to poach from out of state, something that Texas maybe before the addition of Alan Clark would have had to fight tooth and nail a little bit tougher to do just that. But right now, hey, credit to Alan Clark, credit to Sarkisian for adding him to the staff, paying off so far in recruiting, and we'll see if Texas is able to land one of these big fish from out of the state of Texas.
All right, there's a nice, big, meaty edition of the recruiting breakdown. Lots more here to come on the channel. Make sure you subscribe to On Texas Football. If you're not, go ahead and like this video. Also, get over to ontexasfootball.com. We have the up to the second information on the recruiting trail there. If you're not a member, go ahead and sign up right now. Use the promo code OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access on ontexasfootball.com for $49.95. Again, that's the promo code OTFOG, and we'll get you taken care of at ontexasfootball.com. CJ, Gerry, thank you both for the knowledge and the expertise. Thank you to Mark Saunders for sponsoring this edition of the Recruiting Breakdown. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes and the entire On Texas Football staff. For CJ Vogel and Gerry Hamilton, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, hook 'em.
Hook 'em.